Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
Hi everyone, Jason Hunt here, inviting you to join us every Saturday morning for news. The week's headlines in science fiction, fantasy, horror, comic books, video games, plus Comic-Con updates and the weather, and the occasional interview along the way. We call it Good Morning Multiverse. We hope you join us every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, right here on Sci-Fi for Me TV.
Hi, my name is Morgan Despair, and people say I'm the gloomiest, most miserably dire high school student in all of Sunnyside, Nebraska. And okay, maybe they have a point there. And this is Penny Pretty, better known as Penelope Powerhouse. And as you know, she's America's solar-powered teen superhero sweetheart. Penny represents all things wonderful and good and righteous and true. She has billions of fans all over the world who love her to death, and of course they do. Penny has perfect smile, perfect hair, perfect tits, and the perkiest ass anyone has ever seen. And she's even environmentally friendly. That's right, she farts pure hydrogen. One of us is the nicest, most kind-hearted person in the world. The other is a fucking bitch monster of galactic proportions. So naturally, we hate each other. How fucking lucky am I that we're the same person? Because while I was on vacation with my parents, I got this awful sunburn, and I vowed never to go into the sun again. But this infuriated an ancient mythical sun god who cursed me to suffer from a sunny disposition for the rest of my life. So by night, I'm my normal, wonderful self, but with every waking sun, solar-powered Penny takes over my body. And now, no one can see me or hear me while Penny spends every day ruining my life. You see, Penny Pretty, the super wonderful queen of virtue, does everything in her near unlimited superpowers to irritate the living shit out of me. For my 16th birthday, she ruptured my boyfriend's ball sack while letting my filthy gym teacher bang me. And things get way worse from there. Can two teen girls share a body without driving each other crazy? No, they fucking cannot. Find out in the sun-soaked adventures of Penelope Powerhouse, a brand new, all-original graphic novel from full-blown psychosis. Somebody fucking kill her!
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Wozniak.
Hey.
Chris, welcome to the show. So glad that you came on to talk to us about your new comic. Of course, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, and you probably already talked to death some of the stuff that we're going to have on. But you're here for the first time with me, so we're going to take advantage of that. How you doing, man? You having a good night?
Yeah, pretty good. I wasn't expecting a round of applause, so thank you.
I try to surprise everybody with something a little bit different every time. Cool Gamer is in the chat. Welcome, Cool Gamer. Glad that you're here. Please do share the stream. Not for me. I don't care if anybody sees me. It's for the guests. It's always so that people can meet the guest and find out about their book, which is linked below the video. As always, you can click on it at any time. You won't be taken from the stream. It'll open in a new window. We make everything nice and convenient for you. So Penelope Powerhouse, this is a concept that is like familiar and turned on its ass at the same time. This is like, what if Captain Marvel fucked with Billy Batson every time he could?
Yeah, it's close to that. Yeah, isn't it? So yeah, Shazam was not on my mind when I created the character. The way I got to it initially was that Penelope Powerhouse was a children's book that I had invented when I had a comic book company. Chuck Dixon and I invented a whole bunch of a children's line for my company that we were going to do, and Penelope Powerhouse is one of those. And when it came time to, after the company broke up, I wound up retaining maybe 12 of the IPs that we had, and so, but I couldn't use any work that we had done because of the agreements and stuff.
Sure.
So that was that's how that came to be. I just I was like, oh well, I got a ton of things to choose from. I think I got 20 IPs that are lying around, and I just thought, okay, what's easy to get across? And Penelope Powerhouse just jumped up for some reason. It's just like, oh, that's a good one. It's catchy. It's cute. And but I decided that I was just going to do it my way. And I really like adult humor. I like adult animation. I love shows like Rick and Morty and Archer and stuff like that. So I that's what I did with it. I took that character. I made her the villain. And then I went and found a hero to be antagonized by her.
It reads, and I'm just talking about the panels that we saw in the video and that are on the page. It reads like something that would have been quite at home in the old Penthouse comics back in the '90s when they were doing.
Wow, I forgot about that. Yeah, I worked there actually. I did
really
work at. Yeah, I worked at Penthouse for a bit. It was that was a strange place.
I can imagine.
No, you can't. That was it was a small office. Small is relative, I guess, but I mean, it was just as big as like Valiant was in the '90s. If anybody knows what their office looked like, but it was open 24 hours. You could come in 2 a.m. and conduct business, or come in and draw, or whatever it is that you needed to do. And so
I'm just surprised they had an office.
yeah, they had a nice office on Park Avenue. Yeah, Penthouse Comics was not a joke. It was Guccione money. You know, it
True,
was
true.
funded. It was funded by Guccione. So um, they not only had a nice office, they had a budget of. I know a lot about this because I talked to the guy quite a bit. I think $250,000 a month, and it was
Wow.
at yeah, $250,000 a month was his budget, and it was completely at his discretion. I can't even remember. I feel bad now because now I can't remember the name of the guy who ran Penthouse Comics. Um, uh, but that guy, who had done some writing in comics and things, he stumbled into running Penthouse Comics, and but he was given free reign to do it. So basically he was told, that's your budget. I don't care what you spend it on. I don't care if you keep half of it. And it's just like as long as you get the books out and we don't lose money. That is that those were the rules. It was very. We're also talking was that early mid '90s or something. Things were a little faster and looser in those days. Yeah.
What was it? George Carragon?
Yeah, George. Yeah, it was. And
I-
wow, I got some stories I can't share from
those are the
Penthouse
fun ones
for
for
yeah for
conventions.
legal reasons. How long has it been? 90s is the statute of limitations. Yeah, I could tell some of those stories. Yeah, you could show up at any hour of the day. I mean, I remember like my first afternoon that I was there, and this is like um, you know, at that point, we're still doing the freelance thing at Marvel in DC. I think your page rate at Marvel, and my page rate at Marvel was $240 in those days or something, or for DC, in that neighborhood. And my first afternoon at working at Penthouse Comics, I made 4 grand,
Oh
and I
wow.
left with the check in my hand, you know. So things were different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Hey,
can
you need a
imagine.
fax machine? Hey, like it was, yeah, they had showers up there. It was not Marvel or DC. Yeah.
Was it like in the same building as the parent company, or was it like its own building somewhere else? You
It was right off of just north of I just want to make sure my phone is off. I'm sorry because it pinged a couple times. It was It's the building just north of the Pan Am building after you come out of the tunnels on the east side. So I can't remember what that is, if that's 300 Park Avenue or something like that. It's it has the very famous, used in a lot of films and stuff like that.
okay?
But they had half a floor of that building as their office space, and it was really nice. I mean, they had showers. I mean, when I say showers, I mean several showers in a marble bathroom kind of thing. It was not shabby over there.
I was just trying to think what it would be like to work in a penthouse office, and the only thing that comes to mind is I used to work for Maybelline Cosmetics uh, in Arkansas because that's where they are. I don't care if it says Maybelline New York; it's all made in Arkansas. Uh,
Is it?
but one of the managers was talking about he'd gone to New York to the marketing and was talking with other people who worked for a lingerie company. He said they have board meetings about the new line, and female models will walk in wearing the lingerie. And it's not
Yeah.
just showing it, you've got to feel the texture of the
No,
fabric.
they had girls coming up at Penthouse, like even in the comic book thing. Uh, it was a crazy, crazy place. I mean,
Were they modeling?
sometimes.
I mean, I can see modeling. You got to have a reference to draw from.
Yeah, but it was a very George. I mean, speaking in these terms these days, but we were hot off the heels of the '80s, in these days, and things were very, very different. People in New York City used to have sex in the streets, in clubs and parking lots on buses, different times, and and things were a lot faster in those days. And but George in that context was actually a very kind and generous guy. He was very he had a lot of respect for creative people, and he was very, very. I think I may have learned this from him because if you ask any of the guys that work for me at my old company, He was very bent on treating the creative people like royalty, and never, provided they're producing and doing what they're supposed to do, they were treated like kings. He would make sure that they were treated right, that they were paid well, and he had the power to do that because, like I said, the budget was at his discretion. So, if you like I lived in Queens in those days, which is a little bit of a commute into Manhattan. But if I came in at any hour, he'd pick up the car fare, um, order food where whatever you wanted from anywhere. Ask you if you needed anything. Do you need supplies? Do you need it? It was very much. He was very respectful of creative people.
So
It
what
was really
ultimately
nice.
happened to Penthouse? I mean, why did it?
Wow.
It didn't seem like it
Okay, you
lasted
ready?
that long, but
Yeah, well,
yeah.
here's why. Because on top of everything else, there were drugs that went around the office,
Oh,
and
that sucks.
specifically George himself. And so uh, there was he was, it's okay to say this, I guess it's been a long time. Um, but he was using coke, and he had some dealer that he was buying from, and that dealer got busted, right, by the cops, and they tried to run it up the ladder or whatever, and they had nowhere to go. But this dealer apparently said, look, one of my clients is up at Penthouse. And it didn't matter to the police that it was Penthouse Comics or anything. The name Penthouse and the name Guccione,
Yeah.
they're just looking for resume things. So they literally raided the office because George bought a little coke every week, and it was in the newspapers. It was a huge stink, and um, because of that, because of the publicity that went with it, because I think the cops like showed up with reporters or something. It was something crazy.
Oh
It
man.
was literally a raid.
They're serious about
And
their job when they bring the reporters with them.
yeah, so because of that, Bob Guccione had to cut George off, and he was like, "Look, we just, there's nothing we could do. We can't, we got to shut it down." And that was George's life. George literally, no exaggeration, lived in the office 24 hours a day. He slept there. He had, accommodations there. He worked. It didn't matter what time you showed up. He was there working. Like, you can come at 4 in the afternoon. You can come at 4 in the morning. George was there writing scripts. He wrote everything that Penthouse did himself, every story. And if you came in looking for work and he didn't have anything, he'd get food for you, park you in the corner, and then sit down and write a script for you right there. Hang on for 20
Wow.
minutes, I'll get you something. He was like that. So and it was his life, because he was not like a known comic book writer, but he fell into this situation where suddenly he was in charge of something very real. I mean, very important. And it was another. He had the funds to draw real talent. I mean, he had guys like Mark Texeira working there, and he had good talent. Guys way above me that were just like quality guys. A lot of some people shied away from it because of the content. uh, and that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. I like to do, adult stuff or humorous stuff. Wally Wood did that in his
Sure.
time. I mean, there's tons of fantastic Milo Manara. There's nothing but smut, and
A
it's
huge fan of
wonderful. And
Butterscotch and Click.
yeah, it's, I mean, is there a better cartoonist in the world? And it was like Manara and Mobius, are arguably, I think, two of the best. And so it was one of those things where, but when they came in and raided and George got cut off, he essentially lost his life. It was his reason for living. This was his big break. He put it all together himself, and it was running. It was he had a lot of talent working there, and they were putting out magazines, and they were getting them out. And he had, a great working situation, almost unheard of in those days. And it was, uh, too much for him to lose. And he went to the Marriott in Times Square, which has a giant, it's hollow throughout the inside. It's quite a tall building. I
Okay.
would guess 40 floors, 30 floors, something like that. and but the interior is hollow with a giant elevator shaft or something. And he jumped
Oh
in the
God.
lobby. He jumped from the top floor in the lobby, and in the off they had like circular balconies, and he jumped
Sure.
off that and landed on a glass elevator filled with people, and sent like 6 or 8 people to the hospital because it was a glass elevator. George was a big guy, and you know it was just a mess.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had not heard that tale, and I'm usually I was reading a lot of comic book journalism around those years. So
Yeah, I don't remember too many people covering it. Everybody like, I was up at DC, it happened over the weekend. I was at DC on Monday. I specifically remember running into Mike Carlin, and Mike was like, well, he knew of him. He knew him like, from being around the business or anything. And he was like, it doesn't matter what you think of that guy. That's not a way for anybody to go out. It was,
yeah.
it was just tragic all around, you know. And that was
Now
the end
you
of Penthouse
mentioned.
Comics. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I guess too much bad publicity, too much tragedy that they just couldn't replace him. It was just better for Guccione to cut the whole
Well, I
thing.
mean, George was Penthouse Comics. It was his vision. It was Guccione's money, but George, it was his idea. He put it all together. He brought the talent in. He 100% of it was his doing. So I don't even think they considered bringing somebody else in. I don't think that the Guccione Bob knew how much who he would even bring in. When you have a guy like that can run the ship on his own, you know, um, that's it's a lot of hats to wear, and usually you're talking, 5 or 6 people to replace him. You'd want an editor, you'd want, a head writer, you'd want it's when you get that all in one guy, it's unusual, you know.
Yeah. Vincent's in the chat. I love this. First time, long time listener, first time caller kind of
Awesome.
thing. No, it's just a first time watcher. Appreciate you being here, man. Glad that you popped in. Um, Chris, you mentioned time that you spent at DC. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did at DC? Because I've got to be honest. When I read your name, it's like it didn't ring any bells. But if I know what you did, it might like, oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I was essentially a hitman at DC. Is like when guys were behind and they needed to knock out a book, you know, uh, I would get that call, especially when we started getting into like the early '90s and stuff like that. Um, I didn't do any extended runs. That's why you probably, I mean, I
Okay.
worked quite a bit, but it was, you know, um, it was a situation where, hey, oh, this guy's got the flu. We need a book in 10 days. Can you do it? And you just say, yeah, because,
Yeah, of
you
course.
want to, you want to be a working comic book artist. And, it's situations like that. And so, I said, yeah, to a lot of things I shouldn't have. Um, and, you know, but, the old saying was, hey, we can't print blank pages, so you got to do something. And and there was a lot of work like that, especially
So
when
you were a
st-
well-known name to the editors then, because they were like,
yeah, I was,
a
yeah,
regret.
I had, yeah, I mean, I came into the office, yeah, it was one of those things where I lived locally. I was from Manhattan. The offices are in Manhattan. You come in, you do a book, finish it, and then when you felt like working again, you come in and look for another book. You just walk around, you got anything, and you pick something up, that type of thing. And that's, that was normal in those days, you know.
Now this puts a whole new light on some other things here. Puts it in context that I did not know about, because you've kind of stepped into the spotlight earlier this year when the Batman movie came out, and the whole
Not my fault.
I I know, but there was a lot of sentiment that was who's this random guy who's just popped out saying that this is his story, when in fact you were in the industry, you were known in the industry, you traveled in these circles, they knew who you were. So
Yep.
it's not a situation where you know some guy
No,
from Nebraska says I sent in a script unsolicited and
no, it's not. It wasn't fan fiction, if that's what people are thinking. You know, um, it was. It was. It was a story I wrote, and I brought to the office. Yeah, I honestly, I was looking in those days to transition out of drawing into writing because writing is much easier for me than drawing is. Drawing has always been hard work for me, um, because I have pretty severe ADHD. So sitting at a drawing table, long hours that it takes to make comic books is not easy for me. But if you're writing, it's a little bit different. You're not strapped to the drawing table. Even in those days, you
Yeah.
can. I had an electric typewriter in those days, but you could move it room to room, or theoretically could leave the house and still work. No, not that you did. It was before the days of laptops and stuff. uh, but it was one of those things where I wrote a Batman story. I wanted to do some Batman work, and I brought it to Archie. you know
That's Archie
Archie Goodwin, who was
Goodwin. Okay.
uh, uh, at that time like the newly appointed head of the Batman office. Yeah.
Yeah. So what when did you become aware? I mean, were you in the theater watching the thing play out, or did you hear about it
No,
before the
like,
release?
yeah, there was a lot of chatter on Twitter about that. Well, why didn't you say something 4 months ago? And I was like, what are you talking about? I just saw the fucking movie. It's like,
Yeah.
I didn't, like, oh, well, how come you didn't know, uh, like, why didn't you say this months ago? And like, people were talking about, like, when they were, I guess, promoting it or something. Now, I don't follow that stuff. Like with superhero movies, like, I know I'm going to watch them. And with any movie, like, if I don't know about it, I'll watch the trailer, obviously, because I want to know what it's about or anything. But it's all the big superhero movies, I know I'm going to watch them. So I don't want to see the trailers. I don't like to watch any of the extras. I even after the film, after I've seen it, I don't look at that stuff. Like, to me, that removes, it takes the magic away from it. The behind the scenes stuff. I don't want to know
Yeah.
how it was shot. I want the entertainment of the film. What did you make? Show it to me. Is it good? I like the experience of being a film watcher, just like reading a book or something. I don't want it spoiled. I don't want to know the ending or anything. I don't want to know the big turning points. I just want to watch a movie. So if I can get away with it, I don't look at anything. If somebody recommends a movie to me and they're like, hey, this is really, really good, you need to see this. And if it's a person that I trust their opinion, then I'll just go get the film, or go to see the film, or buy it or whatever, and watch it cold. That's my favorite way to see any movie.
Oh yeah. Well, if you like comic book movies, then go get Comic Book Villains if you haven't seen
Yeah,
that
I
one
mean, it's
already.
a Batman movie. Like, you're gonna watch it. Like, I've got superhero films on my shelf there on Blu-ray that, like, I still haven't. I don't think I've seen the last Spider-Man movie, and Spider-Man's my favorite character. I buy it, and then when I have time, I'll watch it. But I never, that the multiverse thing, the coming home thing, or whatever.
Yeah.
I've got it here. I still haven't seen it. Yeah. So
So so when you were watching it, were there whole lifted scenes, or
yeah.
was it more of a thematic thing?
Well,
Um,
fundamentally, the problem with that, and I'm gonna watch what I
and I know
sold here.
you've got a lawsuit going on, so
There's a
you can't.
lawsuit now, yeah. So, and my lawyers, it's a little bit late, that, you know, the the barn has been open for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, while I was watching the film, the Riddler story, um, and we're not talking about Catwoman or the Penguin subplots. Those were added after the fact. They do that for merchandising. Um,
Sure.
but the entire Riddler story is the story that I submitted. It's essentially exactly the same story, except that I wrote a story for an older Batman, because I was looking to you know uh, write something that followed Miller's book. You know, so I wrote my own story that would fit in that kind of world. And they essentially just took that and converted it into a young reboot. Anything that needed to be, like, my book had world events, and they just shrunk them to fit into Gotham. But everything's a one to one. Everything that's different is different for the exact same reason. just to make a young reboot. But it's my story, soup to nuts. You know, literally the same turning points, and you know, and you know, I was infuriated. I hadn't seen the movie, and I wasn't planning on watching it like immediately or anything. But that day I happened to be talking to Chris Batista. You know, I had worked with Chris Batista on a book at my company for quite some time. We did a series together called Guns and Glitter. Um, and he said, you know, he just said something interesting to me. And I was just talking shit. We talking comics or whatever, you know. But he said that he thought the Patterson take on the movie was like the closest to the Neil Adams Batman that he had seen, and that really intrigued me. And I was like, you know what? It's on HBO, and I think it just come on HBO like the day before or something. I was like, you know, it's on HBO. I'm going to watch it. And so, you know, I put it on, and you know, and I think I did know that it was a Riddler story, because I do kind of have a vague recollection of going, you know, when it was announced or whenever I had heard about it. Could have been years before, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I remember saying to myself, like, you know, oh, I hope they're not using my story, you know, like it just is a stupid little, you know, mental note. And then when I'm sitting there watching the film, you know, I'm like, gee, this is looking really familiar. And by the time they get to the scene where, you know, he turns himself in and Paul Dano is in his holding cell and he's revealing that he knows, like, you know, Batman's Bruce Wayne and everything, I was like, you motherfuckers. I was, you know, I immediately I was texting. I had to stop them. That's my fireplace. 1 second. I'm sorry.
The fireplace has come alive.
Yeah, actually, I'm sitting by a fire over here, and um, uh, when it has when it gets to a certain heat level, the fans automatically come on and just blow into super noisy. Sorry, but yeah, while I was when they got to that scene, I had to stop the movie and I had to text Batista, and I was like, dude, is this, you know, did Michael Uslan produce this, you know, the Batman movie? And he didn't, you know, he was mistakenly he said no. You know, he thought that, you know, again, like producers and stuff like that, nobody, you know, you don't, you think
Pay
more
attention
in
to that.
terms of directors. You remember directors, you know, who really remembers a producer of a movie? And he was like, no, I don't think he's attached to it. And, you know, so I was like, well, this is the story I gave to him, you know. It's like, I'm fucking, what, you know, what's going on? This is really, 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 you know, like fucking following what I gave him. And then, you know, by the time we watched the rest of the movie, you know, and I I watched the rest of the film and just, you know, getting a little more heated as it goes. And by the time they got to the ending where when they do the mysterious Joker ending, which is verbatim from my story, you know, it's like I was fucking infuriated. And I was like, and then the credits roll and I see it is Michael Uslan produced. And I, you know, I texting to Batista again. I was like, it's Uslan, you know, and I was pissed. And it was kind of late too. It was like 11:30 at night or something, you know, on a weekday or I think. And I was just, you know, I'm fucking calling Batista. I was like, this motherfucker,
So,
you know.
so how long did it take from the movie to retaining a lawyer?
That was the problem because I don't have the money to sue Warner Brothers. That's a whole
Yeah.
another world. You know, you're talking about Warner Brothers is the second largest film studio on the planet. You know, and obviously, if Batman is making, you know, $1 billion, we are talking about, you know, that's one film. So we're talking about a film studio with unlimited resources. You know, so you know if you're going to sue them, how are you going to do that? They'll just bleed you dry in costs and everything. So, um, you know, I needed to, you know, to attract lawyers that, you know, you know, could deal with Warner Brothers and B, had the resources to deal with, you know, to deal with them. Um, but I need to, you know, essentially, that's why I made the videos and everything. I had to go public and make my case, you know, and eat
Yeah.
all that shit on Twitter with all those fucking trolls and everything. It's just, those guys are idiots, you know.
Well,
But I
you know,
had to.
they didn't know. They didn't know who you were and why, you know, what your connection was to the industry. And hopefully, you know, through this now they will, and that, you know, they'll
Well,
understand
I
that,
mean,
yeah, there's a
I
real
doubt
literal
it because, you know,
connection
I had no idea there was a whole, that there were two camps of, Batman fans that had been warring over, what version. I stepped into that. I was oblivious to. I just watch the movies when they come out. I don't follow, any of that social media, interactions over films and stuff like that. I had no idea
Yeah,
that there
I
was,
like I like them both. I think Ben Affleck's Batman,
I like, yeah,
costume and moving wise, when he does this scene where he's fighting the parademons. I don't know if it's in Justice. I want to say it's in Batman versus Superman because that's where I
yeah,
first saw it. When he like fires the grappling hook and he swings around a cornice, I'm like,
yeah,
that's a move that none of the other Batmans could ever do because they were always in this
yeah.
constricted armored suit. I'm like, that's my Neil Adams Batman.
No, I
Doing
love
the
the what.
acrobatics.
Yeah, I saw Batfleck as the Frank Miller Batman more,
Yeah, he is a lot older.
or at least being more inspired by that. He was thicker, more mature. That's I saw that as we're doing Frank Miller's Batman now. And yeah, I mean I like the Batman, but a lot of people like that are climbing on me and fucking with the dog pile on Twitter and all this nonsense and
Oh
all this shit.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's
Oh,
a it's a
there are
whole civil war.
videos. Yeah, there are videos of Batman hater and that I'm a
Yeah,
there
but
was every conspiracy theory from the the fact that like that I had never written a story or I wasn't even who I said I was and it was all this shit and but I like the movie. I mean the first time it
yeah,
was hard to watch
I bet.
but like but to make the movies I had to watch it a couple more times. I was like it's good. I
I
liked it.
I, I like that as well. Though. I didn't care for his portrayal of Bruce Wayne. I
See,
thought
I
that was
have a
just a little,
theory. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not even going to give Matt Reeves shit for that because it's not Bruce Wayne. But I think what he was getting to was that Bruce Wayne has not been cooked up yet. And that in whatever the sequel would be if they get to make a sequel, that's when, that playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne will be invented. And from the perspective of saying that Batman is actually Batman, and as his true identity, as like they say in the scene,
Yeah, Bruce
and
Wayne's the
that
mask.
yeah, and that Bruce Wayne's the mask, and from that perspective, it does make sense, like if he comes out in the second movie, yeah, here you go, Matt, some more fucking ideas for you, but in the second movie where um, if in the second movie that's when he creates the Bruce Wayne persona, and
I've heard other people say the same thing about that too.
yeah, and
I,
then
I thought it was
but
very much like a Charles Bronson movie, just with
yeah,
Batman.
I think that would be a good way to come at it, and now, okay, now we've got that, Batman that we're, accustomed to seeing, so
Yeah. Vince, I can verify that they are at least doing the Penguin HBO Max series. So there's that. I've seen casting announcements for Sophia. I almost said Corleone, but it's not Corleone. It's the mobster names in Gotham. Falcone, Sophia Falcone
okay,
is going to be in there. So that is going to be something. And yeah, the opening scene with the officers. That's the one thing I really liked about this was that we didn't have to go through 45 minutes of Bruce Wayne being Bruce Wayne while a crime is being committed around Gotham. Is like opening credits done, Batman's walking on the scene. I'm like, okay, damn, we're ready to go. Let's do it.
yeah, I mean, it's I like the movie, I didn't have, you know if you watch it a few times and you settle into what Reeves is trying to accomplish with my story, then like you really you go okay, and it's fairly well thought out, and I don't dislike the movie at all. I think I think he's onto something. I think I think he put a lot of work into it for sure. um so I think it's a good effort, you know so I mean I don't have any complaints with the film itself, other than that one particular issue.
Yeah,
It's
other than the fact that they didn't cut you in for for
yeah,
the work you did on it.
that my name's not on it, but other than that, it's I thought it was a good movie.
Okay, well, let's move on to the reason you're really here, which is, of course, to talk about Penelope Powerhouse. And
The new book.
yes, Initially, right now, it is a sign up. It's not launching yet. Do you have a date in mind?
I
Um,
don't like, because my issue was that I had zero internet presence until I needed to, you know until the Batman thing made it a necessity. So I'm still building my following and everything. So I mean, I would like to launch, in a couple of weeks or something, a few weeks. It depends. You got to pull all the backers in, and but that's, you got to go out and get them manually. You got to do your interviews, and you got to collect them. So I mean, you know, I don't have a date. I was gonna do it for Halloween. I was like, let me keep pushing, and we'll see. You know, so I don't know. So this month at some point probably.
Now, are you doing the artwork as well as the writing on this?
I'm doing everything except the coloring, and I do
Okay.
color. But in a, having some experience in publishing, it can get costly, obviously, when you're hiring six people to make a comic. As but the thing is, I know how to do all the jobs that in a comic book. I know how to everything from the packaging to the publishing. I can write, I can draw. I don't. Yeah, I do some things better than others. I can color, I can letter, I can ink. You know, hey. So in this case, what I decided was, I take on, to keep the cost down on my first project. Um, that I would I basically hired a colorist. I got a great colorist, Diana Noriega. She's from Mexico, and she's really really great. um, and because coloring for me is probably something is more time consuming than it needs to be for someone who does it every day. That's the other thing, is like, I don't letter every day and I don't color every day. So those are, I know how to do them, but I'm not as quick as I could be. So for the coloring, I went and hired somebody that was appropriate. And
Delegate
I
those
think,
tasks. That's
well,
leadership,
yeah,
right?
she's a fantastic artist in her own right. Um, Diana Noriega, if anybody wants to look her up, because she is really great at that kind of animated type thing, and that's what I wanted for this. I didn't want it to be super comic booky. This is, for the most part, this is an animated show pilot. That's really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's got enough. It's not too cartoony. It's certainly not the whole, bean mouth thing that Cartoon Network's got going on now.
Mm.
It's but
Well,
it's below the photorealism kind of thing that
yeah,
you
because I don't see
you
the
know.
point of doing that in a comic book. I mean, honestly, there's a limit to, how much realism I want to see in a comic book. You're at the point where if you're drawing really very realistically, I think Neil Adams would be the the stop point for me. Don't go
Yeah.
past what Neil did. Guys that draw every shoelace and everything. I don't know that that's helping your storytelling or anything.
No, and it was this picture here, just seeing Penelope Powerhouse in that kind of pose, drawn in that style, that evoked the whole Penthouse Comics image, and I had no idea that you were even there
Really?
when I saw it. Yeah, it's like,
Wow.
this reminds me of, the work that I saw in Penthouse Comics.
Wow, that's funny. Well, that's from the first cover. That is my cover, but we're probably going to do some variants. I got some guys lined up, so we'll see how that goes.
That's
But
that's where the money is in crowdfunding, and that's
yeah,
one of the things I was going to ask you about was, uh, so like I can't find the books that I've got, because I'm shipping stuff and I've got all kinds of stuff over here. But I get books in from a company called Bad Bug Media, and Mike Tiener does a lot of crowdfunding, and they have their mature line, and they'll do, here's the cover A with, hero wearing the bikini, and here's cover B with hero not wearing the bikini,
oh,
and it's
okay.
thirty
Well,
dollars more.
yeah, we're not going that far. Like what you saw in that video is about as raunchy as it got. There's no nudity in Penelope Powerhouse. When I say it's adult humor, I mean that in the terms of, it's you're not going to see anything raunchier than Archer. Archer is probably raunchier than Penelope Powerhouse. It is mature humor. It's the jokes are written for adults, it's not for kids. It's not I'm not specifically writing for 12-year-olds or anything. It's a book for grown-ups or high school kids, honestly, college kids, stuff like that age. And I
Okay.
spoke at a high school, um, you know, last week, I think, and the it's like half a dozen girls in the back of the room that were watching that trailer in class, cracking up and everything. And I was like, no, no, no. I don't, I didn't want to be responsible for bringing that into the school or anything, but they went and looked, they went and found it.
Yeah,
So,
because the scene with the PE teacher was definitely explicit in language and topic.
yeah, but that's as far as it goes. There's no uh, uh, actual practical nudity or anything. So, I mean, but there's it's a little bit of smut, but honestly, I know I could write jokes, around that. I don't even need to curse if I, to get a gag across. But, sometimes it just seems natural, so you do, you know. Um, but I don't do it for shock value or anything. It's like whatever fits the gag, that's what goes in.
So when it's daytime, Penelope can see Morgan. Morgan is a separate entity, a ghost, sort of like,
Yeah,
kind of reminds me of Firestorm and Martin Stein. There was always the ghost head of Martin Stein talking to him.
kind of, yeah, a lot like that. But in Penelope Powerhouse, what's going on is Penelope Powerhouse herself is an Egyptian sun god. So
Oh,
um, yeah, she's an Egyptian sun god, and because it's Ra himself that curses Penelope because she complains about her sunburn. So that's where the curse comes from while she's on vacation with her parents. And how that works in that story is that um, you know there's one body. It's Morgan Despair's body, and they take turns occupying it. And when one is in it, the other one's in the Egyptian underworld. And then when the sun comes up, Penny's in the body, and when the sun goes down, Morgan's in the body. So anytime the sun is up, Penny has free reign of Morgan's life, and it completely ruins. That's all she does.
so while
Basically,
they look different,
she spends all day, every day, just wrecking her. And it's very, very personal. It's very disproportionate, and it's a very difficult situation.
so
To
even
get
though
out
they
of.
look different when they interchange, like it says, Penelope's got the perfect ass, and
Yeah,
which
they
would.
are essentially identical, but you know, but one obviously is brunette, one's blonde and famous and everything. But they're in the same body. Argumentatively, maybe Penny is tighter, more toned, sculpted.
But if Penny gets a
Um,
tramp stamp, then Morgan is stuck with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, she could do anything she wants, I mean, it's one of those situations where, um, you know, uh, the other people don't see, if Penny puts on a wig, she's Morgan. Nobody would know the difference. So,
Okay.
so she can do anything she wants, to ruin her life. It's the same voice, it's the same fingerprints, she's occupying her body, so
So at
whatever she
nighttime, does
whatever she wants to do is you know
does sleep Penny when it's nighttime?
Penny
Do they
when it's
swap that
nighttime.
part?
Yeah, when it's nighttime, Morgan is back in her own body normally, as she would be, and then Penny is in the Egyptian under. The way you could see it, if you scroll up just a hair to the page with the alligator there,
Oh,
you'll
here we
see,
go. Yeah.
go down right there.
Oh,
You see
okay.
that Morgan's blue. That means she's in the Egyptian underworld, and only Penny can see her because it's daytime. And then they flop, and actually you got that 4 panel sequence right there when the sun goes. Penny's during the daytime. Um, Penny's in the body, and Morgan is in the spirit world. And then after the sun goes down, Morgan's back in the body, and Penny's in the spirit world.
And so they can see each other. That's a perfect example of
Yeah,
what I
oh,
was.
they're very aware
What I
of
was
each
asking.
other. Yeah.
So Morgan doesn't have any abilities, of course, when she's not possessed
Nothing.
by Penny.
Regular
Very little she
person.
can do to screw over, um, you know, Penny, I mean, what's she going to do? Cut her hair off, or
Well, she's a smart cookie, and she, did like, she's I don't want to give away the story, but she um, works things out, you know. But the real, point of the whole thing is she's just an ordinary high school girl, has no powers, nothing special about her other than, she's a little bit stubborn and she's, got a good sense of being self-reliant. She gets that from her dad, and and that's all she has. Penny is omnipotent. She can do anything. She's a goddess. She's super strength. She can fly into space. She can fly into the sun. She can do anything she wants. And for Morgan to be able to take that on and deal with that from that oppressed vantage point is it's she's got to be there's got to be something to it. She's got to be pretty smart and clever to work her way out of that. And that's what the book's about.
So how much story is there? I mean, is it one
50
shot?
pages. Yeah, it's a one page. It's a 50-page graphic novel. It's 50 pages in script. When the art's done, I don't know what that's going to be. Maybe 60 pages. But it's a one-shot graphic novel. It's going to be a fully contained story. They actually had started this months ago. I was going to do this, and I had a loose plot, and because I was drawing the story, I didn't need to write a full script. So I was working from my plot. I think I drew 8 pages or something, and but then I got some producer interest just off the video, which was pretty random, and I was invited to write a television pilot, which I did.
Wow.
So and I was given some parameters to work in for the pilot script. Um, Nothing that I found um, distasteful or constraining or anything. Essentially, I was told to make sure that you write for a 50-50 audience, to make sure that both men and women will enjoy equally, things like that. And so I was given a few rules to go by. And so, but that's when I sat down and I wrote a full script. The pilot does exist now. I wrote a, complete first episode for television. I don't know if it's going to make it to television. It's that's a
Possibly
whole
for
nother path.
Netflix.
Yeah, that's kind of, the the guy, that we're talking about is connected. He's got a few shows on Netflix, um, animated shows, and it's one of those things where, since I took the time to write the whole script for the pilot, and obviously it was an opportunity and everything, so I made sure I killed it. I went to town and I made sure I was 100% satisfied and happy. And so, at that point, it just seemed to be like, oh, I've got such a good polished story. You know, Maybe I should just do the graphic novel like that. And so now that's what's happening is I basically, I shit can the old pages, and now I'm from my pilot script. So it's gonna. Oh, sorry. So that's where it's going to be. The graphic novel is going to be a representation of the pilot. Yeah.
All right. So I think it's a good selling point that it is a one shot rather than like a 22 page with come back in. It's
No, it's a
crowdfunding.
finished
Come back
story.
in
It's a
9 months, 10 months,
no, it's a complete story, soup to nuts. And that's what all my crowdfunding books are going to be because, like Penelope Powerhouse, and like I said, I've got like a good 20, intellectual properties that I want to get out, and so I just don't have the time to do ongoing series or anything. I got other books I want to do, and so this is my focus now. I'm going to put everything into Penelope Powerhouse, and obviously if something happens, television wise or something, that would be another story. But
Yeah.
once it's done, it is a complete soup to nuts story. It can go on. Obviously, I wrote it to be, I wrote the pilot that it could be a series, but the first initial story, does have a satisfying conclusion. It's not a cliffhanger, you know. So
Of too many comics writers. I still have not forgiven Riverdale for taking Roberto Aguirre Sacasa away from Afterlife with Archie on a cliff ending, third chapter of a 4-piece arc. I'm like, don't do. And
And left
it's
it
been
like
10
that.
years, and I still haven't forgot it. So,
Wow. I love Archie. I'm a big Archie fan. I've got a shelf of Archie collectibles up on the second floor of my house.
oh, collectibles. My son was I've got the long boxes of superhero comics. He's 15 now. He was never into superheroes, but he loved the Archie comics and
Yeah,
more
my daughter
realistic
too.
comics. So he's got at least 1,000 digests because he's
Wow.
always getting them at Walmart. And then we went to Half Price Books and somebody did an estate sale. I mean, literally the entire shelf for $1. I'm like, just sweep the shelf. We'll take them.
Yeah, yeah. My daughter, her first favorite song was Sunshine by the Archies. That was like she
Oh,
would just sing it relentlessly, when she was 6. It's like every day she would just sing Sunshine all day. And then so I bought her the Archie CD collection of all the records. And
and then she went on Sugar.
I made a playlist, and for 2 years I was not allowed to listen to other music in my car. If I was driving her somewhere, we had to listen to the Archies, And so you can imagine, but you want to be that good dad, but it's like
Yeah,
no matter where we're going, it's like no, no, no. I want to hear the Archies, and put the
the
Archies on. She would
sacrifices we make.
sing along
Well,
to all the songs. Yeah.
everybody in the chat, be aware that this is a sign up right. But if you do sign up to be notified, all you early people will be getting a free Penelope Powerhouse trading card with your physical backing of the product when it does go live. So
Yes.
first thing I'm going to do,
Drawn by
notice I
John
took it
Royal.
off the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah. The trading card is drawn by John Royal. It's really nice. I'm hoping for a few variant covers, so that people can pick and choose. I got a lot of friends in comics that are well known,
Oh yeah,
so we're going to be calling in some favors on some of those guys to do some covers, and have a nice mix of things to pick from.
well, hopefully this is a very successful launch to a string of one shots of all your IPs. And
I'm definitely
be
going to
more.
be doing one shots. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for bringing Penelope Powerhouse to the show tonight and sharing your experiences in the other aspects of your comic book career. It was education for me, and I consider myself a nerd who I know everything going on in the comics. None of that. So I felt like a total neophyte coming into the industry again.
Yeah,
It was a
I
lot of
appreciate it. Thank.
it was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of intrigue. So it was kind of a nice mix. So appreciate having you. Hope that you will want to come back again sometime in the future. Maybe
appreciate
after
it. Thank
launch
you.
when you need,
Yeah,
closing
that'd
up.
be great.
We'll talk again.
Yeah, that'd be
Folks in
awesome.
the chat, I would be glad. I'll kick somebody off the show to make room for you if you say you want to come back on it. So you just let me know. Folks in the chat,
I want a list. Maybe I could get a little revenge.
I'll let you know my
Hey,
calendar.
let's boot that guy.
Yeah, you don't get to talk tonight. Chris is going on. Oh, any relation to the Apple people?
Oh, forget it. Would I be crowdfunding?
I don't know. You don't get their money just because you're your second cousin twice removed or something.
No way. I wish.
It just struck me. I was like, oh, I forgot to ask that. Anyway, folks in the chat, thank you so much for being here tonight. We don't have a show without you. We're just a podcast falling woods, making no noise, full of sound and fury, something like that. And as always, while you were here, we just hope to blast. Good night, everybody.